Update 36 is out for the Lord of the Rings Online, and it includes a new endgame zone and new storyline for the game, as well as the landscape difficulty system being revamped and added to the regular servers, as well as some changes to the delving system and other additions. Now, this update was released a few days ago, pardon my lateness, but I still did want to break down the patch and see what we get. So with the new zone that is Gondor Renewed, this is going to be the post-battle Gondor extended back to the west through the western marches of Eastern Gondor as well as Central Gondor. Currently, this does not go back to Western Gondor, even though the map gives some hint that that is a possibility before we actually go to Umbar with the expansion coming this fall. And I think one of the biggest features is there's no longer the Shadow of Mordor, as well as the story, which I do not know too much about, but will be playing through shortly. We only have the East Zone, so this is another hint that they will be doing a West Zone, presumably before we actually have the Umbar expansion. Either way, your character should get mailed to start this area, but you can also just head to the zone by going to the After Battle Minas Tirith and then heading towards Harlond. Now, the other big news with this update is the landscape difficulty system is being revamped and going to be available on all servers. Basically, the system allows you to increase the landscape difficulty in the game by mainly debuffing your character, and when you interact with mobs, that will basically empower them through certain special effects, and it really depends on the tier you are on as well, but this is something that is not meant to be disruptive to people who do not choose to increase their difficulty, so it mainly has to function as an effect on your own character. Now, with this system, you can choose up to 9 tiers of difficulty, of course, with the 9th tier being the most difficult, and you can go with a tier 1 version, which is basically one step above regular landscape, which you could kind of consider tier 0 for 10 total levels of difficulty available in the game. Now, to access this difficulty system, you have to take your character to a hardened traveler, which you can find in many major hubs, and outside the Prancing Pony could be a convenient one for already leveled characters. But with this NPC, you can interact with them and just choose the difficulty you want for your character. Now, you might be wondering why you want to do this outside of just fun, because I personally do think it's fun, but you do get some rewards for choosing to go through this. Notably, you can get some unique titles for your character. They're actually unlocked account-wide, so you can get the titles if you activate difficulty tier 3 or higher, and you have to keep it there from level 10 onward through level 50, and then level 130, there will be 2 titles, one for level 50 and a second one for level 130. And as long as you keep that set, then you will be able to get these titles. Now, I did mention that these titles are actually unlocked account-wide, and they do depend on your class if I remember correctly, but existing characters above level 10, that means they won't be able to earn these titles, just as a note. And just for reference, here I am outside the Prancing Pony in Breland, and here's the Hardened Traveler, and here you can see the difficulty list up to difficulty 9, which is just called Heroic +2, and at the top there is tier 1. Now, the reason I wanted to show this is because there are actual special rewards depending on the actual difficulty that you choose, and these relate to tokens of heroism. So tokens of heroism can drop depending on your difficulty level. So starting with tier 3, you can have these tokens of heroism drop, and when you are on tier 3 or higher as well, that can drop for up to 3 members in a fellowship. So if you are running with a group, they can drop for up to 3 of those through tier 6 difficulty. If you increase the difficulty to tier 7+, then all the members in a fellowship can get the loot. And as a reminder, landscape loot does not actually work when you are in a raid, which is over 6 members in a group. And similarly, it looks like that will not work with this system. Also, just to point out, you do get a higher drop rate with higher difficulties. Now, for anybody familiar with the system previously, the overall difficulty level should be similar to what they were on the legendary servers with Treebeard and Shadowfax, so there still will be that infamous Eye of Sauron effect, and that does mean extra corruptions for enemies as well as the Flame Strike effect and other ground puddles that are now in the game as well. And finally, to look at some of the more specific rewards from the tokens of heroism, you can see that if you collect 10 of these with a daily quest, I believe this would be, you can get 3 of these heroes marks, and the heroes marks are actually what you use to barter here. So bartering, you can get passive valor token, which just increase your reputation with the passive valor faction, the new faction coming with this, and then you can also get some morale and power potions. And you can even use these tokens to get an elixir buff that will increase the drop rate of these tokens for 1 hour. And then the big things that you can get are actually special emotes here. So for the epic emotes, we can look at them in the collections panel, and we have the coin flip here, There's also a hero pose epic, which draws actually a sword out for your character. And then there's an epic lecture, much better than a normal lecture. And then there's epic resist, which does look different than regular resist. And then the epic roar adds a little extra effect, salute, shiver, and finally epic succumb. Hardcore LOTRO, and you all might remember I have been doing a hardcore LOTRO series, just basically I will delete the character if it dies, just to add a little bit of excitement to the world. It looks like this plugin, or at least the developer or developers of this plugin, have set aside their own set of rules, which is something that I've been trying to craft as we do the series, but they basically have this set of rules within the plugin to tell you what you can and cannot do in this. And then there are some extra achievements to go along with this, such as the Naked LOTRO Challenge achievement. That said, at least this one does allow you to have weapon, shields, and class items, which would have helped Dwarden a ton. But with the new landscape difficulty system, maybe I will actually change Dwarden to allow him to wear armor, but just change his difficulty to tier 9. I don't know yet. Let me know if you have any thoughts. Anyway, I'll link this in the description, and shout out again to Rolo for making this plugin. And with all that, we do have some delving changes and additions as well, notably a couple extra 6-man instances, actually all the separate wings for the instances, so that includes the Numenos instance cluster and Great Barrows instance cluster. These 6-man instances now have delvings with them. And for some additional delving changes to go along with that, all the delving barter vendors and mission givers will now be available in the skirmish camps for easy access, so you don't actually have to go to the Before the Shadow zones. There's also going to be a new selectable delving extraordinary box that can drop at tier 7+. These do have a higher drop rate in the new instances, just to note. And if y'all have watched much of my delving related content, you've probably noted that I complain a lot about the rewards of delvings because you get so few delving writs for just doing delvings. And it looks like there are some changes and buffs to the drops of delving writs in this update. First of all, the delving selectable crafting boxes that drop at tier 7 and above can be disenchanted for 20 delving writs. This does mean that these boxes have an expiration timer now, so you can't just hoard them and save them up like I would do, but this will not change any existing crafting boxes, but it is good that you can disenchant them for 20 delving writs. And kind of similarly, just for completing delvings, you actually just get more writs now. They have the full list here for how many writs you get for what tier you run, but notably I think tier 7+ are most important, where you will get 30 writs up to tier 9, and then if you do choose the double digit tiers here, you can get 40 delving writs. It's still not a ton, but it is better than what we used to have, I suppose. Along with this, any armor that you disenchant will actually give you even more delving writs than they used to, up to 30 writs for incomparable armor. And yes, that does mean it would take disenchanting 50 teal armor pieces to be able to barter for 1 teal armor piece, but that is actually fewer than it used to be. Maybe I would actually sound excited if they increased that by about 10-fold. If you got 300, that means you would have to disenchant 5 teal armor pieces for 1 teal armor piece to barter for. That seems a little bit more reasonable to me, but I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy. Anyway, they have also changed the delvings that you get from essences, so you now only get tier 1 and tier 2 essences and no tier 0. Also, for rewards for delvings, you can now barter for cosmetic pets, and then you can now barter for some morale and power potions that can also drop from high tier instance delving chests. Oh yes, and almost forgot that there is actually at these skirmish camps an important reason to visit these delving vendors other than just delving related stuff is to get the weekly delving quest, and make sure you have that if you are running delvings. And now we are finally at the clash changes way later than usual in a video like this. But anyway, player stun removable skills are a change to fast rather than immediate. You might have noticed sometimes that your stun removal skill would actually fail, and this should fix that issue. Theoretically, there shouldn't really be any downside to this because you shouldn't be doing other actions while stunned, but that is the benefit of an immediate skill, is it will just cancel whatever you are doing right now to actually use it, for anybody curious. There have also been some recall skills that can be used while on a steed for the High Elf Beorning and Stout Axe Dwarf. Now, it looks like most of the clash changes are actually just minor bug fixes, but a couple things to point out for champions with your tracery for swift strike damage and power cost. This now increases the power restore of the Swift Strike instead of decreasing the power cost, because it actually didn't have any power costs. And then for Runekeepers, your Do Not Fall This Day skill, as funny as it is, will no longer break the target out of stealth, which in some cases for a burglar could actually be do fall this day if they go out of stealth unexpected in a group of enemies. And then for Wardens, a huge quality of life boost with Forced March, which will no longer toggle off when you enter combat, which is how it has worked for, as far as I know, forever. And now it will just give you a bonus out of combat run speed boost, which is pretty insane considering how fast it is. Also, for Readied Blade, that buff will now give you some disarm immunity for its duration, which is nice, and then the trait for taking advantage of the damage from that has been increased. Crafting. We still don't really see much for the big 2023 crafting revamp that is, I believe, still supposed to be released at least a little bit piecewise throughout updates in the year, but I'm personally anticipating, at least I think it would probably be better if they save the bulk of that for the expansion with the new crafting tier that comes with that. To me, it would just make more sense, so that's why I haven't expected too many major crafting changes until much later this year. I know some people have been like wondering where the crafting updates are, so that could be a little bit why we are not seeing much. And in this update, there is not all that much to really make note of besides a couple name changes to Skarn and Wood, because they now drop in Gondor, and things like Frostrime, Black Ash Branch wouldn't make much sense in the sunny, hot southern Gondor, as well as like, why would there be Gundabad Skarn in Gondor? But anyway, aside from that, there are a couple things that I do want to point out. Actually, one thing here with being able to craft selectable essence boxes. This is specifically for Gundabad, and you can see here that it's item level 474 for the teal one, and then it's going to be 460 for the purple one, and I think the 467 is the second new one actually, with another set of purple crafted essences. You will notice the primary difference between the 467 and 474 teal is the teal one just requires one more universal solvent, and that is it. I suppose at least they are consistent, and you can use malleable Gundabad essences if you want. For the items and rewards section here, there's not too much notable besides just the Bearnings and Brawlers are closer to becoming full classes in the game, with the Helm's Deep Quartermasters now actually offering them rewards. Oh, I actually do want to point out, just because I have run into a really annoying issue with the incomparable earrings from the Return to Karndoom instance, the set earrings that is, and it looks like they have actually had the names of their set bonuses changed to reflect the stats given by the items in their group. Instead, if I remember correctly, they used to just all have the set bonus name, and then they just didn't work even though they were supposedly in the same set because they had the same name, but now they should actually have different names so you can know what is actually in a set with what. There's also quite the list of PvMP changes here as I scroll up, but one thing interesting I think to point out is the adjustment to the distribution of infamy and renown when you are in a group. So it looks like they have fixed some issues where you are basically getting more contribution credit than you should have when you were playing in a group or a raid. And moving on here, we do have tier 4 of the new raid is now available. And I think I remember people pointing this out, but it's been so long I kind of haven't thought about it for a while. But the Slayer Deeds and Wells of Lengthflood will actually give people LOTRO points now, which is great. By the way, shout out to Morphinial here. They have also changed the allegiance panel where you can resize it horizontally and perhaps vertically. I don't remember quite being able to do that much before, but just to point out, if you do interact with the allegiances, you do have that extra quality of life now. And if anybody remembers the horse at Elrond Stable in Rivendell, there was a stable master who would just constantly douse it with water and make sure it was all nice and clean. Well, the horse won't be having that done to it anymore. It's kind of like floating Gandalf. I honestly might miss that. That is it for update 36, but there is one more bit of news with some new additions to the LOTRO store for anybody interested in that related to legendary items. I'm just surprised it took them so long, and it's very timely now that we're basically at the end of the expansion cycle and we'll be moving past level 140, where these are not quite worth basically nearly as much as they would have been if they were at the start of the expansion pack. But anyway, there are 3 new bundles. There's the library starter pack, then there's a legendary item builder set, and then Elrond's Tracery collection. So the starter pack is pretty simple, that it just gives you a couple single-use maps to go to the archive tracery in Rivendell, as well as 1,000 ancient script to help you get started, as a starter pack should. And then Elrond's Tracery collection rather, but what it does give you is some selection boxes. This will give you a box with 1 legendary tracery selection box, and then that box will also have 2 teal tracery selection boxes. From these selection boxes, you can choose any tracer you want. So basically you get your choice of 1 gold and 2 teal tracers. And then the legendary item builder set. This one's a little bit more involved in that it gives your character specific traceries, 3 legendary traceries in total and 8 teal traceries in total. Now these traceries will actually depend on your class. On the LOTRO forums, they have a full list of this. So I'll link this post in the description, but you can find out for your class and which specialization that you choose what the traceries are that you will get. But basically you will get these traceries for your class and spec to basically help build you a legendary item. Now I know what you all are all curious, and what I was super curious is how much does this cost? Well, for the starter bundle that is here at the top, that's only 495 LOTRO points. That's not actually terrible for 1,000 ancient script. I'm just again surprised it took them so long to add this to the store, because I could see that one being popular. Now, at a little bit of a steep cost for 1 gold and 2 teal traceries for 2495 LOTRO points is the Elrond's Tracery Collection. I think slightly higher value in that you get 3 gold tracers and 8 teal tracers for just 1500 more LOTRO points. You can get the legendary item builder set. This also does come with a weapon itself, just to point out. Personally, I don't see myself buying any of these, especially considering, again, how late we are into the expansion cycle, considering we'll have the level cap raised this fall. You know what would be funny is if somebody else just made a character look exactly like mine and have a name similar to Louis. Anyway, shout out to Night Ranger, and with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video and learned something useful, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, everyone.